vivid verses.
The architecture of the house on Larkspur Lane was designed for transparency and flow, a mid-century modern masterpiece of glass and open steel that was supposed to foster an environment of shared life. Yet, as Allan sat in his leather armchair in the dimming twilight of a Tuesday evening, he couldn't help but notice how the very design of the home had become a series of hollow echoes. Allan was a man of precision, a lead actuary for a top-tier reinsurance firm. His entire professional existence was predicated on the assessment of risk, the identification of patterns, and the cold, hard reality of probability. He didn't just see a person. He saw a series of data points that, when aggregated, revealed the truth of a situation far more accurately than words ever could. He watched his wife, Mazie, as she lay on the velvet sofa across the room. She was wearing a silk robe that had cost $400, a garment she had insisted she needed to feel like herself after a stressful day. Her face was illuminated by the harsh, flickering blue light of her smartphone. Her thumb moved in a rhythmic, mindless cadence. Swipe, pause. She had been in that exact position for 74 minutes. In that time, she had not looked up once, not even when the grandfather clock chimed the hour. Observation. The blue light from her screen is currently her primary source of vitamin D and social validation. Deduction. My presence in the room is currently categorized as background noise, akin to the hum of the refrigerator or the rustle of the wind against the glass. Analysis. The probability of a meaningful interaction occurring in the next hour without external stimulus is less than 3%. Allan didn't feel the heat of anger. Anger was a messy, inefficient emotion that clouded judgment and led to poor decision-making. Instead, he felt a calm, analytical detachment. He remembered the woman he had married 5 years ago, a vibrant, intellectually curious woman who used to challenge his deductions with sharp wit. But somewhere in the last 18 months, the woman had been replaced by a ghost who lived for the validation of strangers on Instagram and the drama of her sister's text threads. I was thinking about the gallery opening in the village this weekend, Allan said, his voice level and pleasant. He didn't project neediness. He projected a polite invitation. The small one focusing on minimalist sculpture. I thought we might go, perhaps have a quiet dinner at that new Italian spot afterward. They've imported a specific truffle oil you used to be quite fond of. Mazie didn't even look up. Her thumb didn't falter in its scrolling. I'm just so swamped, Allan. Work is a lot. I'm exhausted. Maybe another time. Allan processed the response. Mazie's work consisted of 3-hour consulting sessions for interior design clients, which she typically scheduled only twice a week. Today, according to the shared calendar, she had seen no one. She had spent the afternoon at a local nursery buying succulents. Internal monologue. The exhaustion claim is a standard defensive maneuver. It is the emotional equivalent of firewall. If I push, she will pivot to feeling pressured. If I withdraw, she achieves her goal of isolation. Interestingly, her exhaustion is highly selective. I recall her spending 3 hours on the phone with Cassidy earlier this afternoon, laughing with enough volume to vibrate the floorboards. Her metabolic reserves are clearly sufficient for external social signaling. They are simply depleted for internal maintenance. I see, Allan replied, his tone entirely neutral. Rest is a logical priority when energy reserves are low. I'll go ahead and make a simple salad here instead. This had been the rhythm of their life for months. The decline hadn't been a cliff. It had been a slow, steady erosion. Allan began to track the rejection rate. In the last quarter, he had initiated 42 attempts at meaningful connection. Invitations to dinner, walks, shared hobbies, or physical intimacy. The success rate sat at a dismal 4.7%. As an actuary, He knew that any venture with a 95% failure rate was an objective loss. Yet, he wasn't bitter. He was simply adjusting his expectations to meet the new reality of the data. The following weekend, they were invited to a small dinner gathering at the home of their neighbors, the Caissons. It was an intimate affair. Just 6 people, high-quality Pinot Noir, and a meticulously prepared lamb tagine. Allan watched Mazie the moment they crossed the threshold of the Caissons' dining room. It was as if a switch had been flipped. The exhausted woman who couldn't muster a sentence at breakfast was suddenly the life of the party. She laughed. Her gestures were animated, and she leaned in close to hear Jones Caisson describe his recent trip to the Dolomites. Observation: her pupils are dilated. Her vocal pitch has shifted up by roughly a minor third. Her posture is engaged and open. Analysis: she possesses an abundance of social energy. She simply chooses not to allocate any of it to the domestic sphere. The tiredness is a selective currency, used only when the merchant is her husband. It's a fascinating bit of social theater. She is maintaining the brand of a vibrant wife for the audience, which makes the reality of our home life appear to be a personal failing of mine, should I ever complain. Clever. Allan is such a rock, Mazie said to the group, resting a hand briefly on his arm. It was a tactical touch, intended for the audience, not for him. I don't know how he stays so composed with all those numbers all day. I'm a messy, creative one, and he's the anchor. The table chuckled. Allan smiled, though it was a practiced social expression. It's a matter of equilibrium, he said smoothly. In any system, if the anchor is the only thing holding the ship in place while the sails are pointed in a different direction, the tension eventually becomes unsustainable. But for now, the weather is fine. Mazie's smile tightened for a fraction of a second. She recognized the logic, but she knew he wouldn't cause a scene. He was too disciplined for that. The drive home was silent, save for the hum of the electric engine. As soon as the car door closed, the social Mazie evaporated. The exhausted Mazie returned. She immediately pulled out her phone, the blue light washing over her features again. That was a pleasant evening, Allan remarked, navigating the winding roads of their neighborhood. Jones has an interesting perspective on European architecture. I'm beat, she muttered, not looking away from a video of someone organizing their pantry. You seemed quite vibrant while talking to Jones about the Dolomites. Are you saying I shouldn't be friendly to our neighbors? God, Allan, don't be so sensitive. It's draining. Internal monologue, a classic redirection. She's attempting to frame my observation as jealousy or insecurity. By labeling me sensitive, she attempts to invalidate the factual evidence of her behavioral shift. I will not engage with the bait. The draining comment is also a nice touch, positioning my very presence as the cause of her exhaustion. I'm simply noting the fascinating contrast in your metabolic output, Allan said, his voice remaining as calm as a mountain lake. It's impressive how you can summon such vitality for a neighbor's travel stories after a day of being too tired to discuss our own week. It's a talent, truly. I'm not doing this tonight, she snapped, staring out the side window at the passing oaks. Agreed, Allan said. We aren't doing anything tonight. That has become the standard operating procedure. The turning point arrived on a Tuesday in late September. Allan decided to run one last controlled experiment. He left work early, stopping at a specialty market to pick up ingredients for a complex, multi-course meal. Sea bass with a saffron reduction, roasted heirloom carrots, and a lemon thyme tart. He spent 3 hours in the kitchen, enjoying the precision of the knife work and the chemistry of the sauces. He didn't do this to earn her love. He did it to provide her with a final, clear opportunity to choose the relationship. When Mazie walked in at 6:30 p.m., the house smelled of citrus and expensive spices. Allan was plating the fish, the presentation as neat as a mathematical proof. He looked polished, wearing a navy cashmere sweater and tailored trousers. "Dinner's ready," he said. "I thought we could eat in the dining room tonight. No distractions." Mazie looked at the table, then at him. She didn't smile. She didn't acknowledge the 3 hours of labor or the $150 in ingredients. She sighed, a long, performative sound of burden. "Already grabbed a salad bowl at the gym," she said, heading for the stairs. "I'm just going to shower and get in bed. I've had a headache all afternoon." Allan looked down at the sea base. Deduction. The rejection is now total. It is no longer about being tired. It is about a fundamental lack of regard. She is not a partner. She is a tenant who occasionally performs as a wife in public. Decision. The investment phase is officially over. Liquidation of emotional capital begins now. Allan didn't argue. He didn't follow her upstairs to plead or point out the fish. He simply took a seat at the head of the table, poured himself a glass of vintage Sancerre, and ate the meal he had prepared. It was delicious. He enjoyed the texture of the fish and the complexity of the sauce. He realized, with a startling clarity, that he enjoyed his own company far more than he enjoyed the pursuit of hers. That night, he didn't sleep in the primary suite. He moved his pillows to the guest wing. He didn't make a grand announcement. He simply redirected his path. 3 weeks passed in a state of quiet, civilized attachment. In those 21 days, Allan stopped initiating. He stopped asking about her day. He stopped suggesting movies. He stopped touching her shoulder as he passed. The silence in the house was no longer heavy for him. It was peaceful. He spent his evenings reading technical journals, practicing the cello, and reconnecting with an old colleague, Kaysen, for chess matches. He felt lighter, as if he had dropped a heavy rucksack he'd been carrying up a mountain for no reason. Mazie didn't seem to notice at first. Or, if she did, she took the lack of pressure as a win. She continued her routine of scrolling, texting, and selective exhaustion. Until Thursday, Allan was in the kitchen, meticulously cleaning the espresso machine, a task he found meditative. He heard Mazie's heels clicking on the hardwood, a sound that usually preceded a request. "Allan," she said, leaning against the marble island. She was wearing her casual chic loungewear, her hair perfectly coiffed. She was projecting a vibe of approachability that he hadn't seen since the Kayson's dinner party. "Yes, Mazie. So, Eloise and Cassidy are going to this holistic rejuvenation intensive at the Willow Creek Estate next weekend. It's a 3-day thing. Deep tissue work, energetic alignment, organic catering, the works." She paused, checking his reaction. Allan remained a statue of polite attention. "I've been feeling so incredibly burnout lately. I think this is exactly what I need to find my center again. To feel appreciated and relaxed, you know? Like I'm more than just a person running on a treadmill." Allan dried a part of the machine with a microfiber cloth. The Willow Creek Estate is quite prestigious. I imagine the tuition for such an intensive is substantial. "It's $850, she said, her voice dropping to a persuasive, melodic lilt. "Which is a lot, I know, but considering how much I've been struggling with my energy, I think it's a necessary investment in my mental health. Can I put on the joint account? Or would you mind just transferring it to my Venmo tonight?" Allan set the drying cloth down. He looked at her, his mind whirring with the sheer audacity of the mathematics involved. Analysis. For 6 months, she has refused to invest 10 minutes of conversation. Value. $0. She has rejected physical intimacy. Value. Priceless. She has avoided shared meals. Value. Minimal. Now, she is asking for a capital infusion of $850 to solve a burnout that she refuses to address within the marriage. She wants the reward of relaxation without the labor of relationship maintenance. She is treating me as a venture capitalist for her personal leisure, while the core business, our marriage, is in literal bankruptcy. No, Allan said. The word was quiet, firm, and lacked any edge of anger. It was a simple statement of fact. Mazie blinked, her rehearsed smile faltering. No. What do you mean, no? I mean that I will not be funding the retreat, Allan explained. It's a fascinating request, Mazie. You've spent the better part of the year telling me you are too exhausted for a 20-minute walk around the block with your husband. You've been too stressed to engage in a conversation over a dinner I spend hours preparing. Yet, you suddenly have the vitality to spend 3 days at a luxury estate with your friends. You seek to feel appreciated at a spa, while you've spent months ensuring I feel invisible in my own home. The irony is quite high contrast, don't you think? That's different, she flared, her voice rising. That's about my self-care. You should want me to be happy. If I'm happy, I can be a better wife. I do want you to be happy, Allan replied. I simply have no interest in being the sole financier of a happiness that specifically excludes me. You see, I know exactly what it feels like to be unappreciated. I have lived in that state for months. I have offered you connection, time, and effort, all of which carry a cost, and you have consistently declined the investment. Why would I continue to put capital into a venture that provides zero dividends? Mazie's face flushed. She moved from approachable to victim in 1.2 seconds. This is about money? Seriously? You're going to be this petty and controlling because I want to go to a spa. Control is a strong word, Allan said, leaning back against the counter. If I were controlling you, I would forbid you from going. I'm not doing that. You are an adult with your own income from your consulting. You are perfectly free to attend. I am simply informing you that my personal funds will not be utilized for this purpose. You are confusing control with consequences. One is an imposition of will. The other is a natural result of your own choices. We're married, Allan. It's our money. A common misconception, he noted. We have a joint account for household expenses, to which I contribute 85% and you contribute 15%. My salary, however, remains my own, as per our prenuptial agreement, an agreement you insisted upon to protect your creative independence. By my calculations, the household account is currently allocated for the mortgage, the utilities, and the cleaning service. An $850 spa retreat does not fall under maintenance of the domicile. If you want the retreat, you must fund it from your 15% or your personal savings. You're acting like a robot, she cried, her voice rising to a screech. Do you even hear yourself? You're talking about us like we're a business. I'm your wife. I'm going through a hard time. I hear myself quite clearly, Allan said. And I hear you. You are attempting to use emotional language to bypass the reality of your behavior. You claim to be going through a hard time, yet that hardship only seems to manifest when I am the one asking for your time. When Eloise calls, the headache vanishes. When the neighbors want to drink wine, the exhaustion disappears. This isn't burnout, Mazie. It's a preference. You prefer a life where I provide the infrastructure and you provide yourself with entertainment. I have simply decided to opt out of that arrangement. I can't believe you're doing this, she sobbed, though Allan noted there were no actual tears yet. You're ruining everything over $850. Actually, Allan corrected her softly. The marriage was failing because of a lack of interest. The $850 is just the moment I decided to stop paying for the privilege of watching it happen. As expected, the next 48 hours were a masterclass in social pressure. Allan's phone buzzed with a text from Eloise, Mazie's mother. It was a lengthy, rambling message about the sanctity of marriage and the harshness of Allan's new stance. Eloise, Allan, Mazie is devastated. She tells me you're withholding funds for her health retreat. That's not the man I thought you were. Marriage is about supporting each other through the dry spells. Allan replied while sitting in his office, his expression serene. Allan, hello, Eloise. I agree. Support is vital. However, support is a bilateral agreement. For the past 6 months, I have requested Mazie's presence and been met with total unavailability. It seems illogical to fund a health retreat for a woman who is too healthy to spend time with her husband but too sick to work on her marriage. Perhaps she can explain the discrepancy to you. He put the phone down. He didn't feel the need to defend himself further. He knew how the narrative would be spun, but he also knew the truth of the ledger. That evening, he was met at the door by Cassidy, Mazie's best friend. She had dropped by to check in, ostensibly to borrow a book, but really to act as a character witness for Mazie's suffering. Allan, eh? Cassidy said, her tone dripping with stage concern. Mazie is in a really dark place. She feels like you're trying to humiliate her. Humiliation is an internal response to an external truth, Cassidy, Allan said, inviting her in with a polite nod. Would you like some sparkling water? I have a particularly nice ginger-infused one. No, I want to know why you're being so mean. It's just $850. You make 10 times that in a month. The amount is irrelevant, Allan said. If she asked for $50 for a book, the answer would be the same if that book was a substitute for talking to me. Tell me, Cassidy, in your many outings with Mazie lately, the brunches, the shopping trips, did she mention that she hasn't had a single meal with me in 3 weeks? Did she mention that she hasn't asked me how I am since July? Or does she only discuss me when the credit card is declined? Cassidy hesitated, her well-practiced script failing her. Well, she's stressed. People handle stress differently. We are all stressed, Allan said. But we choose where we put our energy. Mazie chooses you. She chooses Eloise, and she chooses her phone. I am simply choosing to stop being the ATM that funds those choices. If that makes me mean in your eyes, I can live with that assessment. Cassidy looked at him, and for a moment, the facade of the concerned friend slipped. She saw the absolute lack of anger in his eyes, and it terrified her. You can't manipulate a man who doesn't need your approval. Saturday night arrived, and with it, the nuclear option. Mazie had realized that the victim angle wasn't working. Allan hadn't moved back to the primary bedroom. He hadn't apologized. He had, in fact, been out to dinner with a group of old friends, coming home smelling of expensive cedarwood and expensive scotch, looking entirely unbothered. He was in the library, cataloging his wine collection on his tablet, when Mazie entered. She was wearing a silk negligee he hadn't seen in a year. She smelled of jasmine and desperation. She walked over and sat on the edge of his desk, her hand reaching out to touch his hair. Allan, she whispered, her voice husky. I've been thinking. I've been so wrapped up in my own head. I missed you. I missed us. Internal monologue. Probability of genuine epiphany. 0.02%. Probability of this being a tactical maneuver to regain access to the joint credit card before the Monday morning deadline. 99.98%. The timing is too precise. The jasmine scent is a known trigger for my nostalgia. Allan didn't pull away, but he didn't lean in. He simply looked at her with a calm, discerning gaze. It's interesting that your memory of missing me returned exactly 36 hours before the Willow Creek deposit is due. She froze. It's not like that. I want us to be okay. If we can just get past this, maybe the retreat will help me be the wife you want. I'll come back refreshed, and we can really connect tonight. I'll make it up to you. She leaned down to kiss him. Allan gently placed a hand on her shoulder, maintaining a polite, insurmountable distance. Mazie, he said, his voice as smooth as glass. I'm not a client, and you are not a provider. I find the suggestion that intimacy can be exchanged for an $850 spa package to be deeply insulting to the concept of marriage. If you wanted to connect with me, you had hundreds of opportunities that didn't involve a price tag. To offer your body as a bargaining chip for a luxury weekend is perhaps the most honest you've been in months. It confirms that you view this relationship as transactional. I, however, am closed for business. Her face went pale, then a deep, ugly red. You're calling me a whore? I'm calling you a pragmatist who has miscalculated her market, Allan replied. I want a partner, not a subscription service. You should go to bed, Mazie. You look exhausted. And this time I actually believe it. The scream she let out was one of pure, unadulterated frustration. She realized the gaslighting didn't work. The guilt-tripping didn't work. The social pressure didn't work. And finally, the seduction had failed. He had seen through every layer of her armor. Monday morning brought the final audit. Allan didn't wait for her to leave for her succulents. He sat her down at the breakfast table with a folder. I performed a comprehensive assessment of our life together, he began. Oh God, here we go with the spreadsheets. Mazie sneered, though she looked defeated. It's necessary for clarity, Allan said. Over the last 12 months, I have provided 92% of the household's disposable income. I have performed 70% of the domestic management. In return, I have received less than 5% of your available social and emotional time. This is what we call a hostile takeover in the business world. One party is being drained of assets while the other party provides nothing but liability. You have become a consumer of my life, Mazie. You consume my money, my space, my peace, and my effort while offering nothing in return but exhaustion and demands for more. So what? You're divorcing me over a spa day? No, Allan said, sliding a document across the table. I'm divorcing you because when I stopped trying to make you love me, I realized I didn't actually miss you. I miss the woman I thought you were. But that woman is a fiction, a character you play at dinner parties. The reality is the person who tried to sell me sex for an $850 retreat. I have no interest in being married to that person. I've already secured an apartment near the city center. You can keep the house for 60 days while you find something else. I'll continue to pay the mortgage for that period. After that, we sell, split the equity according to the prenup, and go our separate ways. You're just throwing it all away? There's nothing left to throw away, Allan said. The bin has been empty for a long time. I just finally noticed it. 6 months later, Allan sat in a small, vibrant bistro in the city. It wasn't a gala. It was just a Tuesday night. Across from him was a woman he'd met at a lecture on behavioral economics. They weren't on their phones. They were deep in a debate about the ethics of algorithmic bias. She was laughing, her eyes bright and focused on him. You're very observant, Allan, she said, taking a sip of her wine. I feel like you're actually listening to what I'm saying. It's a rare commodity these days, Allan smiled. I've learned to value it highly. His phone buzzed in his pocket. It was an email from his attorney. The sale of the Larkspur house was final. His share of the equity was substantial. Mazie had tried to fight the settlement, claiming emotional distress, but the judge had been unimpressed by her lack of evidence and the clear terms of the prenup. She had tried to call Allan several times, usually late at night when her bills were due. He never answered. He didn't need to. He had already processed that data. He looked at the woman across from him. He felt a sense of lightness that no spa retreat could ever provide. Internal monologue. The current venture is showing a high degree of mutual engagement. The emotional ROI is already exceeding the previous 5-year average. The cost of entry was high, but the long-term projections are excellent. What are you thinking about? She asked. Just the math, Allan said, reaching across the table to take her hand. For the first time in years, the hand reached back, warm and present. The $850 he had saved was still in his account, but the peace of mind he had gained was worth millions. He had learned that the most important calculation in life wasn't how much you could give, but knowing when the cost of giving had become too high. Allan was no longer an anchor holding a ghost ship in place. He was a man sailing into a very clear, very bright future. And for the first time, the wind was exactly where it needed to be.
Thanks for listening.